Why is school avoidance a new term? I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, and how to build strong family bonds through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about the new trend of school avoidance. In this video, we're going to understand school avoidance and what that is looking like in our schools and get into what parents can do about this problem. School avoidance is a new term being used by therapists, psychologists, and school administrators. And they're wondering what to do about this problem. So what is school avoidance? Is it new? What should we do about it? That's what people are wondering right now, especially since USA Today created an article about it. This was on May 19th. Front page, USA Today, front page. It says, school avoidance is taking hold in kids. So that suggests that it's getting worse. So I think we've all probably been there not wanting to go to school, right? I mean, what child wants to go every single day? I think all of us have maybe, during our years of schooling, we kind of faked sick once, or we knew someone who did, or we whined about having to go, or we didn't want to get out of bed, or we arrived late because we just really didn't want to go to begin with. All of these types of behaviors are actually pretty typical, especially when children hit their teen years. So junior high, high school, you get into puberty, your body's tired, there's a lot of social drama going on, there's tests and stresses and things you're not ready for, things you don't want to do. Basically what that means is there's anxiety over things that you have to deal with. This has actually always been part of school, but this new term, school avoidance, is meant to classify something that they're saying maybe is different than what has always happened. And I do see that there are some differences. I'm not sure it warrants an entirely new classification, but then that's not for me to say, I guess. But I do see some differences, but then some of it might be some of the same old stuff now being given a different voice. And so I think we do have to be careful about that. It is important to understand that school avoidance and that issue in general is closely linked with anxiety. Many people have anxiety, well, everyone has anxiety, let's be honest here. In some way or another, we all worry about things, get anxious about things, we, stress over certain things. But there are some people that really create a habit of putting their anxiety in its place, keeping it in check, not letting it take over in their lives. And then there's some people who maybe haven't learned those skills yet, or their anxiety is to a point where it's very acute. Maybe they're suffering from something like PANS even, or something that makes it that, even harder to handle some of that anxiety. Well, anxiety leading a person not to go to school is very classic. I remember skipping school when I was a child. I remember in grade school, I skipped school because I didn't want to take a test. And I hadn't studied for the test, and I told, my parents I had studied, but I didn't because I wanted to play. And so then the next day I thought, I can't go, I don't want to take this test. And so then I pretended I was sick. But then you had to go back and take the test anyway. So it's not like it ever went away, but it gave me a little bit of time to decide whether I was going to study now or whether I was going to be okay failing, I guess. Anyway, and in grade school, that hardly matters, I know, but those are some of the little stresses and anxieties that a person experiences. So really having this school avoidance, which is a new term, come out and say, well, this is linked to anxiety. I don't think that should be considered to be a new phenomenon, that missing school or skipping school would be linked to anxiety. However, what people are seeing as they're dealing with young people who truly do not want to miss school, but they do not feel like they can be there. And they are really struggling hard. They are thinking this needs to be labeled as something else. Another term that's being used for school avoidance is school refusal. And I think that's something that, really hits home with people. Like, this person is refusing to go to school. Now, as a person who does mentoring and coaching for people all over the world with, children, and I'm talking about parenting all of the time with people, I have heard story after story of people struggling because their children don't want to go to school. But I will say in recent years, it has gotten worse. And in the USA Today article, it said that it has gotten worse since 2020, since COVID. And I would have to say that I concur with that. I see that there are many young people who, for whatever reason, never wanted to go back after COVID. Or if they did, it was very, as far as anxiety goes, painful for them, and they haven't been able to stay very long. Their anxiety levels are higher since COVID. And so this has been a factor in them refusing to go to school. Sometimes even their parents are taking them there. They're putting them in the car and saying, you have to go, you have to go, you have to get out, and the child won't get out. And then they're taking them into the counselor's office, or they're, trying to physically pull them out of the car. They're threatening them with certain things. This is a problem. It might be a slight problem in parenting, but it's also a problem that this would be considered okay to not go to school. And we have to ask ourselves why. Okay, so why is school avoidance a new term? Well, because we're seeing this anxiety behavior related to school take on some new characteristics, a little bit more resolved characteristics, almost a little bit more broken feeling like, well, I bet I can't. Where in past generations, people would say, I know you don't want to, but we need to figure out how it's going to happen. Now it's just, I can't, and people are just accepting that, and the children are getting stuck in this place. So we're going to talk more about why school avoidance is happening and what parents and administrators and other people can do about it. But first, do you see that subscribe button? Click that button now. There's actually going to be another part to this video, a second part, that will focus very heavily on the how-tos to help someone get through school avoidance or school refusal, whatever you've heard it called. And you won't want to miss when that comes out, or the other videos related to self-government, which actually a person struggling with school avoidance really needs. So children do need to learn to step out of their comfort zones, and they also need to learn to follow instructions and go to school, those types of things. But I think we do have to take a step back, look outside of the box and say, wait a second. COVID happened, everyone had to be at home, and they did minimal school. And maybe it was all of it, but they were able to see how quickly they could get it done by not having to be at school the whole day. And so this idea of being home just on the computer, seems like a good alternative from having to be gone all day, having to wake up on time. Why not just wake up when I want, get a few things done, and then move on, just like I did during COVID. So basically COVID opened this door to, hey, here's an option. You could just do your school at home, where only homeschoolers thought of that before. Most people didn't think of that. And so I think that we have a lot of people saying, that's an interesting thing. And the children feeling like there's another option that wasn't there before. And actually they didn't fall too far behind potentially. And so they feel like, what's the big deal? Right? And maybe they feel like they need to have their needs being met. Now, here's another thing. They were on computers so much during COVID that they actually got really, really accustomed to being on the computer all the time. In fact, we might argue many people developed some computer or technology addictions during this time. So this could also be leading to a person not having the social capacity that they once had because they were removed so much in an antisocial manner, and then just getting their social in other places and possibly even becoming addicted to being connected in those other places. So that could be playing a factor. I'm not saying I know for sure, but I'm saying, when you look at all the pieces, you definitely have to consider that. Another thing that we have to consider is that our times are changing, and there were other things that happened during COVID. Go ahead and blame COVID, but there was a lot of hostility that broke out socially around the planet. I mean, we're talking, it even happened in Kenya. It happened everywhere that people were doing riots, Black Lives Matter riots and things related to social issues. The whole idea of intersectionality and victims and oppressors and all this kind of stuff really became prevalent. And maybe some of the children feel like, I don't want to mess with all that stuff. I don't like it. It's too much drama. It's too heated. It's too much. Maybe they don't agree with it, or maybe they do agree with it. Maybe they feel a victim. Maybe they feel they're an oppressor and they have no way out of it. So they'd rather just not show up and be reminded that they're an oppressor all the time. Maybe we have messed with stuff socially to the point that some of the children are in their own heads and they don't even know how to communicate about it. There could be layers of anxiety that really we don't understand. And maybe school isn't a fit anymore. Maybe they really do need to be homeschooled. That could be an option for them as well. So we have to look outside of the box as we look at this issue. A psychologist that was interviewed by the USA Today named Dalton said, I don't treat anxiety because anxiety is temporary and is something that can be fixed, but he says, I do treat avoidance. And I think that really gives us a great gauge going in a forward direction. Yeah, it isn't the anxiety that's the problem. And so the more that we worry about the anxiety, the more that we're going to have a problem. Really what the problem is the avoidance. A person is training themselves to avoid something. This means their thought processes need help. They need someone to help navigate them past that temptation to avoid. So the avoidance is just one of those symptoms of the anxiety, and it can be handled. It also is something that gets the person feeling more and more anxious all the time. So what we need to do in a very broad way to help people with school avoidance issues is we need to help them work on their avoidance. And I've got some key strategies for how to do that. So if you want to find out about those key strategies, be sure to go to my next video, which is what can parents do about school avoidance problems. Click on the link to that video now and you'll get the how-tos that you've been looking for.